All right, so what is an AR trade? What is an AR setup? Okay, it's a bounce trade after the inducement of the breakout traders above or below the Asian box, right? So you have to wait for the inducement first. All right, Asian range, right? AR Asian range, ADR average daily range. That's why we use AR, right? Price will pull back to bounce off the 50 MA and 50% of the Asian range, making it all an Asian range, AR50, Asian 50 box, 50%. Okay, price will pull back to bounce off the 50 MA and the top or bottom of the Asian range, making it an AR00. So we call the top and bottom of the Asian box the 00 and the middle of the Asian box 50. I mean, I didn't want to call it like AR00, AR50, AR100, then it looked like we have three different setups. So I just call it the top and bottom of the Asian range of 00, making it simple. Okay, TDI will confirm with a pinch of the RSI line and signal line and will bounce. If it bounces, right, if it bounces 1.5 points or it traps, that means it goes above and comes back below the static. All right, so let us see what all that means. Okay, all right, so no anchors required. Okay, no anchors required. So if you notice, there's no anchor here, only an inducement. So all we're looking for is to come out of the Asian box, come down, they hit it, and then they roll. You see, GDI comes within 1.5 of the static 50 line, the fixed 50. Closed above, I'm in. Okay. Remember, this is a continuation trade. That means in level 3, I don't like to take that because I'm at the high of the structure. I don't expect it to go higher. Okay, so in level 3, I tend not to. Why? Because what they do is they'll come first leg, they'll do this move, and they'll create the second leg, and then they roll and they start dropping. And you're grabbing the move into the second leg. Now, sometimes there's enough space. You're like, you know what, I'm going to take it. I'm going to try to take it over there. Possible. But the riskier trade, as long as you're okay with the risk, take it. Okay, take it. All right. So anyway, this is a AR move, right? So this one is a 50-50-50. There's no inducement out of the Asian box, right? So it literally just bounces and it rolls. You could have taken it, hit your target. But here's my inducement. Doesn't matter how tiny. As long as it pokes its head outside the Asian box, that's my inducement. It rolls over, right, to the 00. I'm sorry, the 50. The middle of the Asian box. Okay, the 50 MA. And this is a trap. This is called a static trap. The RSI line literally for a long goes below the static and comes back above. So all I need is the RSI signal line cross. Okay, price closed above 13, I'm going long. But anyway, this is a continuation trade. Okay, price bounces off the 50 EMA and the 50% of the Asian range. That's why it's called an AR50, Asian range 50%. So here we go. They induce out of the Asian box. Notice there's no anchor up here. I don't know what is up here. Sometimes anchors up here. You get the ID move followed by an AR move. That's usually how it works. Okay, but it doesn't have to have an anchor right next to it. All right. So here's my inducement. They pull back to the 50% of the Asian box, the 50 EMA, and notice the static trap. They trap the static. Doesn't matter if this one goes below and comes back above and goes back below. Price never closed below the 13 until here. Probably news. And then I'm going to take the short. Happens to be below the market baseline is better. All right, nice little drop. Right to the blue tracer. Okay, notice this is one leg. There is no close below, back above, back below, right? Just one leg. That's why the AR50. Okay, TDI confirmation. This is a bounce of the static. All right, so here again, no anchor to the left. Induce, come back, 50% of the Asian box, 50 EMAs, 2 pins, closes below, RSI below the signal line, below the static. In this case, RSI went below the market baseline. All right, notice the bounce. If it's the bounce, the distance between the RSI and the static is within 1.5 points. Obviously, the closer the better. Okay, the further away doesn't mean that it won't work. It's just, it's like if you want a static bounce, it's closer to the bounce is better. Okay, here's an example of a TDI confirmation with a static trap. So all this mumbo jumbo goes on, right? Doesn't matter. 13 induces out of the Asian box, pulls back, they hit the stop right to the middle of the Asian box. AR50, nice little shift. RSI line below the signal line, below the static. This is a static trap. That means it goes above the static and comes back below it. Okay. All right. So that's an AR50, middle of the Asian box. This is the AR00. It has the same rules as the AR50, except the bounces off the top or bottom of the Asian box. We call that the 00 line. So here's my top of my Asian box, right? This is where you call the zone flip. Okay, zone flip, right? They induce, they bounce off the top of the Asian box. There's the 50 EMA there, and notice it should be the static. That was my mistake. All right, notice the RSI line signal line cross above the static. All right, on the first leg, RSI signal line cross above the static. On the second leg, RSI signal line cross above the market baseline. Obviously, if the first leg goes above the market baseline in this example, or the previous example goes below the market baseline, is even nicer on the first leg, but it doesn't have to. Just RSI signal line cross above or below the static. Okay, so this slide was just to show the bounce of the top of the Asian box in the 50 EMA. All right. So same thing with AR, you get the inducement outside the Asian box. So what do? They induce outside the Asian box. They come back, they bounce off the water and the bottom. Here's your zone flip move, right? Bottom of the Asian box, they tap it, they roll over. 1.5 or less between the two. RSI below the signal line, below the static. Okay, RSI below the signal line, below the static. So this is the Asian low. Okay, now the AR safety, okay, is AR50 or AR00 with a second leg. So the AR50 is considered AR50 or the AR0. So the both of them matter. As long as they have the second leg, we just call it an AR safety. Okay, it could be an AR50 safety or an AR00 safety. So we just simplify, we call it an AR safety, doesn't matter. Okay, so here's my inducement. They come back, they give me my first leg, you take. All right, notice the first leg, if you take, RSI below the signal line, below the static. It's the static trap. Okay, so you take the first leg, it closes back above, you take the scratch, it rolls over and closes back below the 13. Okay, now it depends on whether RSI signal line crisscross. Now sometimes someone say, well, crisscross. Sometimes they think, well, it's close enough, it didn't crisscross. Depending on how you see it. I mean, my eyes are not as good, so it looks like it was right there, but depending on whether you see it crisscross or not. All right, if they do crisscross, all right, if it crisscrosses, then you have to wait for RSI to be below the market baseline. You go on the next candle. Okay. All right. So in other words, the AR safety will create an M or a W off the water. Remember, people were like, well, can you trade the M then W off the water? The answer is yes, as long as there's an inducement. So in other words, they induce out of the Asian box. They come back. That's my first leg. This makes it a AR00, right? The top of the Asian box, the 50, and this is valid. Okay, so this becomes my, I would probably take my first trade over here. Okay, it goes up, whatever, comes back down, takes me out. Okay, so I take a negative scratch, it rolls over. Ideally, I'm waiting for it to go above the market baseline. If you're aggressive, and if you see, hey man, you know what, I don't need it to go above. Remember, if the second leg of the name ball pattern, your RSI signal line will not be above the market baseline. It'll barely cross because it's too fast. Second leg name ball pattern, you go. If it's not a name ball pattern, you wait for a shift candle, RSI above the market baseline. Remember all the rules we learned when we're talking about a structure. Okay, name ball pattern, long, all right? Because it got two legs, second leg makes it an ID safety. Where I write ID safety and AR safety? Oof, AR safety. Okay, the AR safety equals the TDI rules. Remember the TDI rules apply. All right, so here it's unqualified, right? It's 2.6. So the distance from the RSI to the static is more than 1.5. So that for me is a pass. You pass on it, you don't take it. All right, so they did induce, they come back, but it doesn't qualify, so you pass. This one induced below this low, right? They induced, they come back, they hit it, you said, okay, cool. This one passed, right? This one qualified. On the hard right, this may have actually crossed. So if you did take this trade here, you killed it, and now you're waiting to see what happens. Notice this one uncrossed, right? RSI line, they cross first, and then it uncrossed back above, and then they cross back again. So if they uncross, making this still one move, right? One leg, just like an advanced M, right? Then all I need is RSI line, signal line, cross. If this one closed below and RSI line crisscross, it goes below the signal line, the red line comes back above, then I gotta wait for RSI line to be below the market baseline. Okay, since this one, you can refresh it before you take a trade, right click and click refresh and see where this one is. If you see it didn't cross, no problem. When the minute RSI signal line crosses, you short it. Okay, if not, if this one did crisscross, if it goes below the market baseline, it's probably in here. As long as this candle touches the 13, you can short from here. All right, if it confirms on this candle, then you cannot take it and never touch the 13. So that's the pass. All right, on this candle, the pass. On this candle, it's perfect to touch the 13. Got to touch the 13. All right. Okay. All right. So let me read some quick questions here. The AR trade the same setup as Jim's London patterns? Yes, Steve. That's what Jim called the London patterns. Okay. The AR setup looks like the ID setup. It is like exactly like an ID setup. Okay. The only difference between the AR ID is that AR induces out of the Asian box. That's why it's called an AR. They induce, they come out of the Asian box and they pull back in like that. Okay. The ID does not need to do that. Can you tell on some charts what is a trap and what is a stop hunt? Can you tell what's a trap and what's a stop hunt? Okay. Okay, so these are considered stops, right? These are considered stops. So they like this is a stop hunt. They'll throw the spike. They'll come right here and they'll throw the stop hunt is where they throw the spike and they pull back away. A trap is this. You see where they go below. So a stop hunt literally is one function. They hit the stop. That's it. A trap is a two-part function. When they close below, people were like, "Oh, that looks like an M. I'm going to go short." So not only are they hitting the stops because there's people putting stops below here, they hit the stops, but they're also inducing you to go in the wrong direction, right? Some people are like, okay, that's my quarter point right here, that little green line. So that's the stop on, that's an M structure. I'm going to go short. So not only are they hitting the stops by going below the move, just like this, but they're also inducing you to go in the wrong direction. Okay, so those are the fundamentals of a stop hunt and a trap. All right, a trap is a dual purpose. A stop hunt is one purpose. Stop hunt is just the money grab. The trap is not only the money grab, but also the inducement to go in the wrong direction. Okay. All right, so we talked about the TDI rule applies. The rule applying means the 1.5 distance from TDI. Okay. Now, Here's an AR ID combo. We've talked about this a couple of times when we're doing our Sunday session as well as on the Thursday session. An AR ID combo makes this a stronger setup. Okay, remember, in this case, it's the first pullback with inducement. AR does the inducement. ID is the first pullback. If they do the first pullback with inducement, nicer. So, why? 50-200 cross. Normally, what do you get? W off the Mayo. Okay. Now this is more than 4 candles below this, so this comes a shoulder head shoulder move. All right, shoulder head shoulder of the Mayo. 1350 cross, first pullback. Okay, this is the first pullback after the 1350 crosses, making this an ID move. But because they induced out of the Asian box, makes it also an AR. So it's an AR ID combo or an ID AR combo. 2 pins closed above, R sign above the signal line above the static. Make sure it's 1.5 or more or less, and then you're ready to go. Okay. Remember the AR ID combo, when you have 2 setups in one, it makes for a stronger trade. So here's the big anchor, level 3, 1350 cross. Now this is the end of the, look at this. This is 18th, this is the 21st, so the end of the week, right? So the gap, beginning of the week, false move, blah, blah, blah. But notice the distance between the RSI line and the static is 2.4. So this doesn't even qualify anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, doesn't matter. 2 pins, whatever, doesn't matter. Doesn't qualify, right? The next time it hits the water, the 50, they have a little inducement out. You see the little pin bar? That's a little inducement out of the Asian box, making it an AR and an ID, since the first valid pullback to the water. Okay, so if you don't look at that, this one looks like a inducement, 50% of the Asian range, so this is an AR50. Okay, because the first pullback, a valid pullback, makes it an ID 50, and because they only got one leg, it's an ID and AR50. So it's an AR-ID combo. Okay, because that first leg, all I need is RSI line above the signal line above the static. So this little black line became my static. So the RSI line got to be above the signal line above the static. That's because the first leg, if it goes above, comes back below, and comes back above, then I got to wait for it to go above the market baseline. All right. Awesome. Okay. I like this quote by James Richardson. It says, patience is decisive in decision. Okay. So you're decisively not making a decision because you're patiently waiting for your setup. All right. It's actually a pretty good quote. Okay. Patience is something that is very hard, especially on days like today where there's a lot of red news. You know there's a lot of red news. You still want to trade. You just have to wait for your set and make sure there's no red news and get out before the red news, because you don't know which direction the market's going to go.